Hello, my friends. Yes, I'm Brother Sean, otherwise known as the Barefoot Franciscan, and even the dogs agree. Can you hear them barking? That's right, they're keeping an eye on the house for me. But you know, God is a God of love. What does that mean for your heart today? God is a God of love. God is not a God of fear. And as we who are of the Christian faith embrace Holy Week, we know in our hearts that God, a loving Father, Mother, sent their Son to shed his blood for our freedom. Now that might sound really, really evil, that someone would send their Son as a human sacrifice like the Mayans and various indigenous peoples of the world. But this was not an act of revenge or to appease angry gods. This was a loving Father, Mother who sent their Son, who agreed to come as an offering of love to unite our hearts. And 2,000 years on from that death, are we any richer for that experience? I would like to share with you a quote. Prayer is the oxygen of the soul. That is our link to the Supreme. Humble prayer. So what is prayer? Prayer is what we're doing now. We're doing a live broadcast. We've no script. We're coming from the heart to your heart. We're trying to unite two worlds, two hearts. Two worlds, the spiritual with the material world. Two hearts, that of a God of love with the child of God within us. And we can bridge those two worlds by reflecting on one word, surrender. And we can add to that word smaller words, surrender of my mind, my body, my spirit, my soul, to a loving Father, Mother God, who truly cares about my presence on this earth. Fear not, God is with you. What does that say to your heart? Fear not, for God is with you. Today we live in a beautiful world, but so many have lost sight of the simplicity of that love because they're being swamped by drama, by fear, and many have lost sight of the simplicity of effortless living. They're living from hand to mouth, where fear is their only diet. Trust is a beautiful word, but how do you trust when all around you is coming apart? This reflection for Lent isn't a punishment, it's a blessing. And though many, many times I get it wrong, and the hard thing for my ego is to surrender to the Supreme Father, Mother God and say, I'm sorry. I've really cocked it up big time. But rather than beat myself up like I used to do, I just surrender in love and ask for forgiveness. And I just say, help me. Help me to attain the goals that I agreed to before I was born. Help me to see what you see, to hear what you hear, to love what you love, to be the person you called me to be, a child of love. But I know in saying that, there have been times in my faith journey as a young Catholic nursing monk, as a young nurse in charge of a busy ward, by the bedside of a dying patient, and even in trying to deal with severe depression, even when I lost the power in my leg, there were times when I took my mind off that God of love because I was so distracted by the reality of the situation I was in. Fear had domineered my life, and at times I have to be very aware of that. So it's a balancing act, isn't it? It's being aware that outside of me there are forces and influences that I have no control over, but within my being, I am bathed in the presence of the Supreme, and I'm fed each day with selfless love when I allow myself, like now, to be still in the presence of God, to be still with Mother Earth, and to embrace my God, not in the wonderful cathedrals, but in the wonderful landscape, the beating heart of God. Just be still now, and I invite you to ask yourself, how can I change my life for the best? What must I do in order to have this inner peace that is not of this world? What must I do? And that ugly word reappears, its ugly face, surrender. Surrender your heart to love. There is no other way. If you want to buy some goods in the supermarket, today we use our plastic card and we type in our PIN number. Well, it's the same when we come to God's bank, when we invite the angel bankers to bless us. We have to use the gift of free will. And sometimes, if we're in a place of ego and a place of self-importance and I love me and tough about what you think about me, sometimes that word surrender is not as easy as it sounds, is it? But to surrender means to say yes to love. It is not a denial, it's an invitation to love. So let us just embrace that stillness and let there be no fear. Because God is not a God of fear. Oh yes, He's been projected as one of fear and vengeance, and many have challenged me even to revisit that simple statement that God is a God of love. Especially when you see what's being done in the name of God. When you revisit all the horror stories and the scandals within the church. Shameful. But that is the ugly face of man taking his eyes off a loving God, where man seeks to control God's love. We cannot control that love. It is a free gift. Like this is my free gift to you, to talk with you, to share with you, to embrace your heart and say, fear not, because a Father, Mother, God loves you. And whether you like to hear that or not, you were formed in your mother's womb through love. And the sooner we surrender, the sooner that light comes in and touches us. And it sets us free. It sets us free to open our hearts to love. And there's no right or wrong way to doing that. But for me, the easiest way is to just get down on my knees and say, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. And as we now enter the mystery of Holy Week as a Catholic Christian, we know that it's a time of celebration. It's a celebration of the true meaning of love, where a young man voluntarily, freely entered the Paschal mystery and allowed our brothers and sisters to crucify him and to experience an agonizing death for our love. I know many will say, oh, it never happened, he had a walk-in. Well, I respect your point of view, but I can't accept that. Because I have felt his pain. I have felt the nails in my hands and my feet. And I have touched those wounds. And I am ashamed of all the wrong that I have done in my life. And the least I can do is offer my life now for love.